Well, we have a new 32 amp portable EVSE with some smart charging capabilities here today that we're going to dive into and see if this is the right charger for you in your garage or carrying around in your car. Hit that subscribe button, stay tuned, let's dive in and see how it is. All right, everybody, well, welcome back to another Tech Motoring episode, and Paul here with another product review for you. And this is a 32 amp portable EVSE or EV charger. And we're going to be putting this through its paces today. We're going to be seeing how it looks and seeing if this is the right EVSE for you. Now, there are a couple cool things about this EVSE is that is portable, number one, but it's also a smart charger. So it does have some Wi-Fi capabilities, so you can connect it to your home Wi-Fi, monitor it, start, stop, so on and so forth. We'll see more about that functionality once we dive into this video. So I believe the company name or the parent company is actually Cure, C-U-R-E. And then this charger is actually listed on Amazon as BODIOO or BODIOO, depending on how you want to pronounce that, B-O-D-I-O-O. And as you can see here, it doesn't even have a brand on the box. It actually just says Portable New Energy EV Charger Gray. That's the color, I assume, with a model number there. And there's not too much information on the box whatsoever. In fact, it's actually pretty sparse. We actually just see a picture of the charger, which is actually pretty nice. I like when they give you a full color box. They show the charger, they show the handle here. Obviously, we're looking at a J1772. This also has the NEMA 1450 plug. So if you're looking for something that plugs into the NEMA 1450 outlet, this could be the one that you're looking for. And obviously we see some things on the box here as well. Over voltage protection, short circuit protection, rain and moisture proof, and accompanying car portable. So there you go. That's how you know it's a portable charger. Now, I do want to point out one of the things it says here on the box, which is rain and moisture proof. Now, they're claiming that this is an IP65 rated charger, which is pretty good for outdoor use. Now, personally, I think if you're going to be using this as a portable charger, you happen to go someplace that is going to require you to park outside, and your charger is going to be outside, and you're going to use it for a couple days, a week, I think you'll be perfectly fine doing that. However, I don't know if I would consider this to be a mount it outdoor of your house and then leave it there kind of situation. IP65 rating is really good, but I typically like to see something a little higher for chargers that are going to be outdoors 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, like an IP67 rating. But once again, this being a portable charger, I don't think that was necessarily the purpose behind it, was to mount it to your outside of your house and use it, especially since it comes with only a 16.5 or thereabouts foot cable. So we're also going to be measuring the length of that cable, as you know if you follow this channel, in its entirety. So we're going to be measuring it from the very end of the J1772 back to the EVSE, which I believe is the true length. And then, of course, we'll measure the other end of it, which is the EVSE length, and the pigtail that comes off of that to the NEMA 1450 to find its true length, because I don't believe you should be counting anything from the EVSE to the NEMA 1450 plug as length, since it's not really designed to be kind of pulled and moved and back and forth. So that's just my personal belief behind that. But anyway, let's dive in the box and take a look at what we get. All right, so diving into the box. So it looks like it's just in this bubble wrap packaging here. So let's move that out of the way and kind of go through what we see here. I would say in the case normally, but in this case it would be in the plastic bubble wrap. So it looks like we have a little bit of a manual here. And it looks like we have our EVSE. That's actually a nice size EVSE. It's actually pretty small, actually. I thought it would be maybe a little bit bigger. Oh, I stand corrected. There is a case. They just don't put it inside of the case when they ship it. So here we got a little bit of a case. It's more of a flexible bag than you would normally get with these. As you can see, it just says what is this? A portable new energy EV charger gray. So it's like they took the actual words right off the box and put it onto this bag here. Okay, interesting. I think there might be a little translation issues going on there. But so we do get a little bit of a portable bag. And then this is the charger right here. Now let's just lift this up real quick. Okay, it's not too bad. It's not too heavy. So that bag might hold it perfectly fine. So let's go ahead and get this removed from its packaging here and take a look at it closer and see what we get. And then we're going to go down to the garage and do a test with it today. And then, of course, we'll also do a longevity test. And what we do is we use this charger as our primary charger to charge up our vehicles for at least 2 weeks. And we pretty much just charge up everything with this charger and see how it holds up over the course of those 2 weeks. And then I give you my final verdict on it. Let's get this unpacked and then we'll get back to you. All right, you join me back after I have unpacked the BODIOO EVSE here from the box and all its plastic wrappings. So as we saw before, it does come with that canvas bag of some sorts. So it does have some sort of, portability aspect as far as you can throw your charger in the bag, go off on your way. It does come with this user manual here. Now, once again, this is a smart charger. So most of the manual is talking about how to set it up on the Wi-Fi and connecting it. And that's why they give you these QR codes here to download the app. Now, one thing that I will mention is that I had assumed that when you scanned the QR code that it would bring you to the Google Play Store and then there you can download the app. However, it just downloaded a random APK. If you're not sure what an APK is basically the application, but not from the Google Play Store. So it downloaded just the app onto my phone, and then I was able to install it after allowing certain permissions on my phone to do so. Now I can't test the iOS version as I do not have an Apple phone, so you're more than welcome to try that. But what I can tell you is it doesn't actually have the app in the Google Play Store, which is, I don't like having apps downloaded to my phone that have not passed through the Google Play Store. The app is called Thymix, Thymix, and that's what gets downloaded to your phone. You're supposed to register for an account, so on and so forth, and that is pretty much the process there. And we'll go through that when we go to set up the charger for the first time and connect it to the Wi-Fi. We're still going to do all that, but I'm not too thrilled about having to download an application that's not going through proper channels through the Google Play Store in order to use that functionality. Now, of course, this will most likely work without that functionality if you don't want to use the smart app. But for those of you who are looking for a smart charger, just keep in mind that you have to download a third-party application onto your phone that's not going through the necessarily proper channels. So the manual is decent. It gives you all the specs of the charger. Now in here, it does show an IP66 rating. It does also shows that on the back of the EVSE unit here. The Amazon listing shows it as an IP65 rating. Now it does say IP65 on the enclosure on the Amazon listing. Here it says IP66, but the back of the charger says IP66. I don't know if maybe they're talking about the handle being IP66, maybe the enclosure is IP65. It doesn't specify, so I would assume moving forward this is just an IP65 rating. Never assume up, always assume down at that point. But pretty much the rest of the manual, just the specifications, goes over the screen a little bit, goes over the application, how to set it up. Decent, it's in color for the most part. It'll get you through what you need to do. Has a little card here, a certificate of conformity, basically a quality control card showing that it was inspected when going through the process of being manufactured. We have the cable was wrapped up with some of these Velcro straps, pretty standard. So now I will say right off the bat, I've had many portable chargers in the past where they were designed to be a primary for your garage and a portable if you need it. So it would come with a cradle for the EVSE, so you could just mount it in your garage, and then when you needed to take it on the go, you just lift it up out of that cradle and heave ho, and you're off to wherever you need to go with it. The other thing I noticed is it doesn't come with a holster for the J1772 handle or a cable wrap for the cable itself. So they're really trying to say this is a portable charger. Maybe don't use it as your primary in your garage. Once again, with a sub 17-foot cable, yeah, maybe works in some like one-car garages, but if you have like a two-car garage, you're probably not going to be able to get it across much of the garage in order to plug a car in. So unless you're parking pretty close to this, probably not the most ideal of situations. Let's dive into the actual unit here. So here we see a ridiculously sized length pigtail. So we see that we have a cable from the unit all the way over here. This has got to be, it's got to be close to 3 feet. Like, no joke. This has got to be a near 3-foot pigtail. Normally, I don't see these more than 18 inches. This is more than double of what I normally see. The head on it, though, is pretty nice molded head. We do have a UL listing on the NEMA 1450 head, which means that this is probably a UL listed NEMA 1450 plug. That being said, I'm kind of glad to see that. The charger itself does not show any certifications whatsoever. It does have an FCC certification, but as most of you know, that's just for wireless interference. It really has nothing to do with safety. And the J1772 handle also has a ETL certification. So I'm assuming that this J1772 is probably ETL certified as well. But the unit, I don't believe, is certified in any way, shape, or form. At least not that they're showing. They don't show any of that on the Amazon listing either. So we got our extremely long pigtail. We have our, let's say, 16-foot cable for now, but we're going to test that length once we get down to the garage. And once again, I always test from the J1772 handle down to the bottom of the EVSE. That's the true length of this, in my opinion. If it's counting this near 3-foot pigtail, well, I'll let you know that, and then you can determine how you want to proceed if you're interested in this unit. So let's take a look at the J1772. So pretty standard J1772 handle. I've actually never seen this particular one before. It does have the typical thumb latch here. I'm glad to see that it is protected with some sort of plastic over that mechanism there. This mechanism here, the one that clasps into the car, appears to be metal, though I couldn't grab it with a magnet. So I'm assuming it is some sort of non-ferrous type of metal, maybe like a brass or something, but it does feel metal. Yeah, it does feel pretty metal there. It doesn't really bend or anything with the button. So I feel like that is probably pretty safe there. At least it's not going to break if you were to drop it. On the end here, we have our little rubber dust cap for the J1772 inlet there. Pins look pretty straight, looks pretty good. There's a little bit of an O-ring down at the bottom there for water intrusion if it were to ever to occur. We have it tethered here. This rubber cap is tethered to the J1772. A little bit of a different way of doing it. Normally we just see a piece of rubber that's molded, a molded part of the rubber cap, and that's usually just tied into the J1772 handle. But here we have a little bit different. It's just actually like a, possibly like even like a little bit of a steel cable there. And they kind of just put it around some holes there to basically hold it in place. So, hey, you know what? I think that works as well. The only thing I don't like about something like this is it could be aggressive enough to scratch like paint on a car. So that's why I don't typically like to see that, especially this one, because you see how close it is to the end. So this is just going to swing in the wind and possibly bump your car. Normally I see them where they're tied or tethered back here. And so when they're tethered back here, they're that much further from the car. So they don't really cause that much, you know, hitting to the car. Of course, with this being a rubber cap is not a problem, but with this cable, it's hard to say. So I would almost prefer that you just kind of do this with it to kind of keep it out of the way, kind of roll it over the handle there. But other than that, the handle looks actually pretty good. I'm glad to see that it actually at least has a rubber dust cap on there. So that pops on just like this. And this is the unit. So this is the 32 amp capable unit. And yeah, it looks pretty good. It's got this round screen, which is an interesting way of doing it. Normally we see the square or the rectangle screens, but the round screen looks pretty cool. and it looks like we have a touch-sensitive button here that I assume changes the amperage of the charging speed, which we'll test that when we get down to the garage. So the screen looks pretty cool. I'm curious to see how it looks. From the pictures, it looks like it's a pretty colorful screen. It's got some information on there, but we'll see when we get this plugged in. And then, of course, the rest of this is the cable here. And the cable looks, you know, pretty... it's not bad. It's a little bit thicker than like your Tesla mobile connector, just to kind of get a little bit of a comparison there. If you could see that, there is a little bit more thickness to this charger versus the Tesla mobile connector, which can also do 32 amps. So, you know, I like to see, especially for mobile chargers, especially if you're going to say this is a mobile charger, I specifically like to see them being a little bit thinner, because it makes it, number one, usually makes it lighter, but also it's unwieldy if it's a little bit too thick. And for a mobile charger where you're going to be probably wrapping it up, you know, and putting it back into a bag and trying to get it into a specific corner of your car, you probably want a little bit of an easier cable or a thinner cable. Anyway, so that's pretty much it unboxing the BODIOO Smart EVSE. Now what we're going to do is we're going to get down to the garage and get this plugged in, and we'll be doing our testing today. So we'll be doing a 3-hour long full maxed out 32 amps test today. We'll be taking temperatures from the unit, making sure we get everything from it that we need, and then we will see how well it works over the next 2 weeks, and then we'll give you my final verdict at that point in time. So let's get down to the garage and take a look. All right, everybody, well, welcome down to the garage where we will be testing the BODIOO 32 amp portable smart EVSE. So as you can see here, like I was mentioning before, that pigtail is absolutely ridiculously long. It goes off camera. Normally I plug it in right here, and normally it lands somewhere around here on my wall here, but this is obviously a little bit different situation. So because of that, I just grabbed one of my laying around the cable wraps here, and we're just gonna wrap it around for this testing purpose. I also want to bring up about the length. So we've measured the length of the cable here, and just to kind of give you an idea, this from the center of the NEMA 1450 down to this part of the EVSE, the top of it, was 34 inches. So 34 inches, almost 3 feet long of this pigtail that goes through here. I've never seen one that long before. The body of the unit is about 9 inches tall. And like I said, it's pretty small, but 9 inches, pretty good there. It's only about 4 inches, 4.5 inches wide. And then the cable, which I'm actually kind of impressed, the cable from the bottom of the unit to the very end of the NEMA 1450 handle here, let me unwrap that, is 16 feet. So even though they claim it's about 16.5 feet, it's actually about 16 feet from the end of here to the bottom of it. So I think that's pretty good. That's it's a pretty accurate length compared to some other ones I've seen in the past, where they measure, if they say 16.5 feet, they mean 16.5 feet from the end of the J1772 all the way back to the NEMA 1450 plug. And that I always think is, woof, that's a bit short. You're really only getting like a 14-foot cable or 13.5-foot cable sometimes with that measurement. But this was actually 16 feet of usable cable. And of course, you actually have this extra 3 feet and change that you could potentially, you know, pull out if you had to. So this would be, you know, hanging basically like this if you absolutely needed to in a pinch. So overall, you're looking at about 19 feet and a little bit more of cable from the end of the J1772 all the way back to the NEMA 1450, which I think is pretty respectable. Once again, 16-foot true cable though from the end of the J1772 to the bottom of the unit. This is the unit here. Well, let's go ahead and get this out of our way. So this is the unit here. As you can see, it's got the screen lit up here. Looks pretty nice. Once again, just a round color screen. We do have this little light bar on the front of it, which I think is kind of cool. It looks like a little spaceship coming at you. So the first thing it tells us to do is to connect the charging gun. But I think what we're going to do is we're actually going to set up the application. We're going to see if the app works, how it works, the setup process, and see how that goes. And then we will start plugging it in and charging a vehicle with it. So let's go ahead and start with that. All right, everybody, welcome back. So First off, let me apologize for the background noise. I know there's a lot of nature happening on out there, so if you hear a lot back into the microphone, my apologies for that. But other than that, we got the app set up. So once again, we had to install it through that QR code that was listed in the manual. Once you download that third-party app onto your phone, once again, not going through any particular official store, once you do that, you have to register an account, which is an email address. They send you a code in your email to confirm. You create a password, you log in with an email and password. Pretty straightforward, just wanted to point that out before we dive into the app. So here you can see the app, and what we're going to do is just going to click the add new device. Now I haven't read the instructions in the manual. I have no idea if this is the right thing to do, but I think this should be pretty intuitive, or at least I would hope so. So let's go ahead and hit the use the device location, allow for nearby devices. So now we are going to get close to the charger, of course. We're going to see if anything happens. So there is something listed there on the Bluetooth list. So we're going to hit connect there. I assume it knows what it's looking for. So hopefully that's the proper one and I'm not connecting to a neighbor's speaker or something. Enter the pairing code 123456. I can't do that on here. So I'm just going to click confirm. It must automatically have that as the pairing code on the EVSE here. And it says it's interrogating right now. So there you go. So we'll give that a minute, and it looks like it is connected. Wow, that was super simple. That is what I'm talking about. See, that's the type of functionality I like to see in smart chargers, is just when you open the app, you go into, you click connect to this, boom, and it's done. So the other thing that we need to do is potentially charge or connect this to our Wi-Fi. So as you can see in the top right corner here, we show as offline. So let's click on that. And here we go. So we can connect. So what we're going to do here is we are going to just throw in the password and we're going to click confirm, and let's see if we get anything going here. Now it should send that information over Bluetooth to the charger. The charger then reaches out to the Wi-Fi. Once it connects to Wi-Fi, then it should be able to communicate back to the app over the internet. And it looks like we do have the Wi-Fi icon is now lit up on the charger, or it was just a moment ago. Hopefully we have a strong enough signal in here, even though I haven't had an issue in the past. And we're just going to keep giving it a minute here. We'll just see what happens. Now I do recommend, if you're going to connect this to Wi-Fi, if you're in a garage like me and you don't have necessarily the best Wi-Fi signal in here, always connect to your 2.4 gigahertz if you have the option versus your 5 gigahertz. Your 2.4 will go further, and that way it'll be a little bit better signal coverage in your garage if you have that ability. So it looks like the Wi-Fi signal is connected on the charger. I'm not seeing it here on the app. So let's go ahead and maybe back out and go back in. All right, so after a few minutes, what I noticed is it wasn't connecting to the phone, or the phone wasn't showing that it was online. And so what I decided to do was I decided to try to connect back to the Bluetooth, and just about that moment, it decided I'm gonna connect to Wi-Fi, and the app now shows that it is connected successfully to Wi-Fi. All right, so now that we are in the app here, let's see if we could get some information. This still shows it's connected to Wi-Fi. The app shows it's connected to Wi-Fi. I'm not seeing any information here or voltage or anything. It says the current preset current is 0 amps, which it's not. It says 32 on the charger. Another weird thing I noticed is when you go to change the amperage on the charger, is that when you go from 32 to the next one, it says 0. When I tried to save it on 0, it went back to 32. But I thought that was funny how it uses 0 as like an option. But it looks like you get about 8 amps, 10 amps, 13 amps, 16 amps, and then 32 amps. So interesting. I like to usually see about 24 amps somewhere in the middle there, because usually 24 is a nice little happy medium there, but that's perfectly fine. 16 and 32 are pretty decent. And yeah, so far it looks pretty good. Once again, I'm not seeing any voltage here. We did see voltage before when we were over Bluetooth, but I'm not seeing it now. All right, well, no big deal there. I think what we need to do is just kind of go through this process and see some of the options here. So some of the options, looks like we have charging record, which shows a record of everything that you've done in the past, which is kind of nice. Booking, which I assume is like a schedule. You can plug and charge, or you can set it for booking. So I guess what you could do is just set a schedule for yourself if you don't want to charge during certain times of the day. If you have on-peak, off-peak hours and you don't want to charge during those on-peak hours, you can probably just book a schedule and say, I want to charge during those times. Yep. So then you could change your schedule right there, as you can see. So that's kind of cool. I always like to have that type of schedule thing in there. We're going to be utilizing it in a plug and charge fashion today, so we won't really need that. Nice that you can set the current from here as well on top of the EVSE. It's good to see that you could do it from the EVSE, because if you're going someplace, because it's portable, and you don't necessarily want to connect it to their Wi-Fi, or maybe they don't have Wi-Fi, you can just as easily set the current right from the charger, as opposed to having to do it from a mobile app. Of course, you could always do it over Bluetooth, but just in case. Yeah, so that looks pretty good. Really not too much else in here. It looks like there is some over-the-air upgrades. It looks like you have to be connected to Bluetooth for that. Maybe we'll try that in a little bit, and we'll go from there. In the meantime, let's get this plugged into a car, because we're going to do a 3-hour test with this EVSE. And in the meantime, we'll get temperatures of everything to get our baseline, and we'll take temperatures during and after our 3-hour test. All right, everybody. Well, you join me here next to our Ford Mustang Mach-E, where we're going to be plugging in the BODIOO 32 amp portable EVSE now. So first things first, the cable actually feels pretty good considering the thickness of the cable. It actually feels pretty good. Feels like I could get it around the garage relatively easily. It is a short cable, but it feels pretty good. Let's go ahead and get this plugged in. We're going to see how this insertion feels. We're going to see how quickly it starts charging. Basically, we're just going to be testing how this process is when you come home from work. You need to plug the car in. Does it feel comfortable, or is it too tight? How does that go? So let's go ahead and get this plugged in. So let's just... All right, that actually felt pretty good. It was a slightly different angle than what I had anticipated it to be, but actually it felt really good going in. It felt like it made good contact. You heard the latch snap down real good. So this is the little concern here that I had with this, is that because it's so close to the car, this is now rubbing up against the car. I don't like that, because if it's outside and it's breezy, it's gonna run this cable up against the paint of the car. Not a big fan of that. The car is now charging. It started charging pretty rapidly, so looks pretty good. We're gonna give it 3 hours now, and we're gonna see how this is after those 3 hours. So let's go ahead and take temperatures for baseline temperatures, and we'll also take a look at the unit right now to see what it shows on the screen. All right, so we are going to take a look at how the BODIOO does during this test here. So as you can see, it is stretched out a little bit across just my two-car garage here to plug into the car. Not terrible. I still have it looped up there though. But yeah, so it does have a little bit of a stretch in the cable if you need to go across the garage, as you can see. So this is just simply getting baseline temperatures here. We're not trying to prove anything right now. We're just trying to get some baseline temperatures. It's a pretty warm day outside, so you can see the cable's between about 91, 89 degrees. I think I saw a moment ago. What is that? 93. It's really warm out today, actually. So 94 there. And what we're going to do is we're going to compare these temperatures to how it looks probably during the charge, but also definitely after the charge. So it's a little bit cooler over here by the handle, about 88 degrees. So as you can see, we're between like 88, 89, and about 93 degrees based on where we are in line here. So as we can see here, let's see if I can turn this a little bit better. We have our top big number there, which is our kilowatt hour. So as you can see, we put 0.30 kilowatt hours into the vehicle already. We are at 244 volts, and we are roughly 31 amps going into the car. So we are set for 32 amps, as you can see there. We have about 3 minutes into the charge already, which is pretty good. And you can see we have some icons up here. I'm not sure what all of them mean off the top of off the top of my head, but it looks like maybe that means battery charging. The one next to it means battery full. We have the Bluetooth one, we have the Wi-Fi one, we have the schedule one. I think that one, second from the left, means that the charging gun is plugged in, the charging handle, as we typically call it. And I think that might mean ground or plugged in. I'm not sure exactly, but either way, there's a bunch of icons to tell you what you're doing here. Pretty interesting screen. I think it maybe makes it look a lot better than it is functionally. I mean, it's got the blue outlines there, and
makes it look kind of cool, but honestly, you're just getting some very basic information. So, but yep, as you can see, we're almost a half a kilowatt hour into the vehicle, and we'll see how this goes after about 3 hours. We'll also see if that number there, that time number, is accurate, because I've seen some in the past where they're not very accurate. Yeah, so we'll come back to this in a little bit and see how well it does. All right, so we're at the midway point now in about an hour and a half. As we could see by the screen here, it's just showing about an hour and a half. So that does appear to be accurate as far as that goes. And so let's just get some temperatures here just to kind of give us a midway point to see how they are. Now, we were looking at about 89 to like 92, 93 beforehand. Now, of course, as you could tell from that, it is warm today. It's pretty hot out there. So let's just see what we're looking at here. Now we're about 105, almost 106 there. Let's check the cable. 103 there at the cable. Let's just check another part of this cable since it's so long. 105, closer to the unit, about 122. That is fairly warm. Let's do a touch test there. Yeah, that's a little warm. I mean, I could hold it, as you can see. It's not like it's too hot to touch, but 115, 116 on the plastic. Getting cooler as we go down. Let's take a look at like the back of the plastic here. 107, 108. Yeah, it's hot. It's hot in the back of the unit right here. Now let's just try some on the front here. I know this is not 100% accurate with these thermal guns, but it's really just to get an idea of, you know, where we started and where we're at now that we've been testing this. So this part of the cable is about 110, 111. Let's just do that touch test real quick. Yeah, it's a little warm. It's not terrible, but it's a little warm. And let's actually do right here at the cable. This is where it usually gets cooler. Yep, 103, 104. And let's hit some on the handle here, about 100 degrees on the handle. Up top, it's always cooler there. Yep, and let's try it down here a little bit, 96. So yeah, just do a quick touch test here. Yeah, that feels pretty good. So not too bad so far. Once again, it's got to be at least 90-something degrees outside, maybe 91 outside right now. It's a warm day, so ambient temperature is pretty high. I would say the only concerning part would be this part of the cable here at 120-something degrees. And keeping in mind that this is in the shade too. Now, we're not outside. We're not in, you know, the sun here. This is inside the garage. And we're still looking at 120-something degrees right here on this cable. So yeah, definitely a little bit warm. We'll see how it is in another hour and a half, and then we'll kind of go from there to get an idea of what we're looking at. Let's look at the screen once more here. 11.6 kilowatt hours has been delivered to the car. 235 volts, so our voltage has dropped a little bit. Still at like 31 amps and change there, and once again, just over an hour and a half into this charging session. So not too bad. So let's keep an eye on it and see how it does in about an hour and a half. All right, everybody. Well, we are 3 hours into the test here. Let's see how we are doing here. As we can see, we put about 22 and almost a half kilowatt hours into the vehicle. Still looking at about 233 volts at 31 and a change amps. And we're just about that 3 hour mark. So let's go ahead and go back through with our temperature gun here and see how we are looking. So let's start with the NEMA plug here, and we are about 109 degrees, which actually that's actually pretty cool for a NEMA plug. I've seen these get up into the 120s every once in a while, just because this is the source. You know, this is where it first hits before it has to go through the cable. So pretty impressive to see that here. Let's take a look here. About 103, 107 on the cable there. Let's just check the midpoint of this cable, about 108. Let's see what this has gone up to. Let's try to get on the cable. There we go, 121. So really hasn't gone up at all since an hour and a half ago. About 120, 122, just in that range there. So that seems to be holding up pretty well after 3 hours. Let's go ahead and take some shots of the back of the unit here. About 123, which is what that was before. I think I just saw 125. Yeah, a little bit of like 125 in this area here. Let's try the side. About 117, 118, 120. Yep, so it's not doing too bad. Got the front of the unit here about 115, 116, 110. Let's try up top. 115. Let's just put our hands on that. Yep. So a little warm, but you know, you're not really touching this at all when you're charging your car. So here's that light bar thing. I really wish the light bar would change colors depending on what you are doing, right? You think this would be RGB, so that would give you an indication. Is it charging? Is it stop charging? Is there a fault? Something like that. But it looks like it just stays white. All right, let's get to this part of the cable here, about 115 right there on that part of the cable, 117-ish, so right about there. Yeah, feels okay. All right, so let's head over to the other side of the cable here. Start right there, 106, 104, 103. Yep, so that's doing pretty good. Come up on the handle here, about 100 degrees. Let's get pretty close to the car now. About 104, 105. Top of the handle should be cool. About 101, yep. And 104. Do a little bit there, so about 100 degrees. So yeah, the handle seems to be pretty good. All right. Yeah, feels pretty good to the touch. Cable feels warm, but once again, not something that I would be concerned with. Of course, keep in mind that we are inside. We are not outside in the sun. So if the sun was beating on this cable, I'm sure it would get pretty warm. But overall, it seems to be holding up pretty well so far. Now let's go ahead and do the unplug part of this. All right, well, you join us here at the unplug portion of this. So what we're going to do here is we're going to push down on the button. It should disconnect the charging. So we should discontinue charging, and then we should be able to pull it out without any resistance or any problems whatsoever. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's push down the button. All right, immediately disconnected charging. All right, and let's go ahead and pull it out. All right, felt pretty good coming out. A little bit of stiffness, maybe from the heat expanding things, but overall it looks pretty good. So pins look pretty good. I don't have an issue there. Everything looks good on the car side, so that looks like it turned out pretty well. All right, well, that is it for our 3-hour test of the charger here today. So what we're going to do now is going to continue to use this as our everyday charger for the next 2 weeks, using it to charge all of our vehicles. And we'll see how it holds up during those 2 weeks. We'll see how the functionality of the app works, which, by the way, the app was working perfectly fine once I had it plugged into the vehicle. And we'll talk more about that functionality once we continue to use the charger. All right, so we're still inside of our 2-week testing window with the BODIOO 32 amp portable EVSE here. And there's something really weird that I want to kind of show everybody real quick. And I don't think it's a big deal, but I do want to show it. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to plug the car in. I'm going to do this all in real time so you can see it. I'm going to take the charger, run the charger across the garage, plug it in, and the counter that is on the charger that tells you your kilowatt hours, your speed, doesn't seem to reset in between charging sessions. So you can see the time is still showing over 8 hours. Our energy is showing about 89 kilowatt hours there, or it will be shortly. And this seems to not reset. Now, I assume it resets once I maybe unplug the unit, which I'm going to try here in a minute. But it does seem a little weird that the timer and the kilowatt hours meter does not reset. So let's go ahead and unplug and see if we notice that there's a reset during the unplug part. All right, so we just unplugged, replugged it back in over here. So let's go ahead and plug this back into the vehicle. All right. Okay, looks like it started charging, and yes, so it has reset. So interesting that the timer only resets after you unplug it and not in between charging sessions. Just something I thought I'd point out there. So just interesting tidbit that I've come across. All right, everybody. Well, you join me back here now 2 weeks after using the BODIOO, however it's spelled, Level 2 32 amp EVSE equipped with the J1772 handle and the NEMA
1450 plug. So let's go over the whole thing in a nutshell. I'll talk about my 2 weeks experience using this charger to charge up multiple vehicles, including my Tesla vehicle with an adapter like this one here. And we'll kind of give you my final verdict of what I think about this EVSE here. So overall, we're looking at a pretty decent mobile portable charger that you can buy, maybe keep in your car, maybe use it as your primary garage charger if you have to. So as we can see here, we do have this fairly long pigtail cable here that goes from the NEMA 1450 outlet to the EVSE box here, and that is, you know, a pretty decent length. I mean, it's just about 2 feet or a little bit more than 2 feet if you include the box and that cable. So normally we see something short like a 1 foot cable between the NEMA outlet and the charger, but in this case, we actually had a pretty long cable. Now, I don't personally like having the really long cable. I think a short cable is probably better. It does kind of add to the overall length of the cable if that is something that you need the extra length. And speaking of the cable, we did have a pretty decent length. So as you saw earlier in the video, the cable length was actually pretty on par with what they claim it to be. In fact, if you measure the entire length out from the tip here to the NEMA 1450, it's actually a little longer than what they claimed. So kind of a nice gesture there that you're getting a pretty decent cable. But once again, we always like to measure from the end of the NEMA 1450 to the bottom of the EVSE, which is normally where this is mounted to your wall. Speaking of mounting to your wall, the charger does not come with the mounting brackets for either the charger to be mounted to your wall or for the J1772 handle and for the cable wrap. As you can see, this is one that I'm just borrowing for this test. So that is a little bit of a miss in my opinion. Some people are going to want to buy this as a permanent solution for their garage, though if you're looking for something that you can, kind of make it look clean, mount everything, make it look really nice, you're going to have to put some extra dollars out for, the holster, the cable wrap, and if you could find a mount that works with this, great. If not, you're gonna have to find another product that includes all those accoutrements. So I feel like this is more geared towards being a portable charger, not so much a put it in your garage and use it in your garage as your primary everyday charger. So I really feel like they tried to gear that towards that type of purpose. And the cost and the price of this really kind of says that, is that they're trying to cut back and maybe make some savings for not only them, but also for you, considering the price of this charger is in the low $100 range. So we do have our cable, like we mentioned before. So once again, this is a 32 amp maximum charger. We do have a fairly decent sized cable here. It's actually not bad. It's not the worst I've seen, but for a 32 amp unit, I usually like to see them a little bit smaller. Even something like what the Tesla wall connectors use, a little bit smaller than what this particular one does. But overall, it's not the worst I've seen. I've seen thicker cables, and it's pretty easy to use this cable if you need to wrap it up in a circle, whether or not to get it back into your vehicle, into the bag that comes with this. So it's pretty easy to make loops in the cable to get this back to the way you needed it. So okay with the cable, I think the cable is perfectly fine. We of course did some temperature tests when we charged up the Mach-E initially. This is a 3-hour test, and we got some pretty good temperatures during that time, considering ambient temperature was about mid to high 80s when we were doing that test. I thought the temperatures were very, very respectable in that sense. So we were having some pretty decent temperatures throughout this entire cable, even at the handle side, and even in the short multiple foot pigtail here that we have down to the unit, they were all well within spec. Now, of course, I can't say what would happen if this unit was to be used outside in the middle of the sun, in the middle of the summertime. You may get some, degradation of speed, or, maybe possibly even the unit might shut off in that event, but I'm not able to test that particular scenario. Talking about the J1772 handle. Now, overall, I didn't have a problem with the handle. I thought it was perfectly comfortable for just plugging it into a car for those couple seconds. The cable going into the handle using this kind of grommet here is perfectly fine. The handle looks good. It's very plasticky, nothing really special there. But the mechanism here, I'm glad to see, is actually covered under a good chunk of plastic here, so at least it's protected in the event that you were to drop this or hit this up against something, or if it gets thrown around your car, you're not going to be damaging the locking mechanism here that easily. When you plug into the port of your vehicle, that was perfectly fine as well. I did not have any issues with that. I also didn't have any issues plugging it into an adapter for a Tesla. As you can see, pops right on, no problem, comes right off just like so. So really no issues there as far as the tolerances of this. It seemed like it was pretty good going into the car every single time we used it. No charging faults by the vehicles, nothing like that. It seemed like it was pretty solid. One of my biggest pet peeves of the J1772 handle was actually just the dust cap. So the dust cap that goes over it like so, which is a great addition for when you're being mobile with it or portable. This area in which they tether this to the J1772 handle is pretty bad. So for instance, when you have this plugged into a vehicle and this is hanging, this is potentially making contact with your vehicle. It was on mine. And so this kind of, maybe blowing in the wind, kind of swinging back and forth is hitting your vehicle. I don't really think that that's a great idea. Usually they tether these way, way back, either like on the cable or maybe at the back of a handle here. So this way, when it falls away from the car. And the only thing that could make contact would be the little rubber, cover here, the dust cover. So I'm not crazy about how that is in this particular case. Of course, if you're concerned about it, you can just cut it off or do what I do, and which was I would just take this and I would lay it over the handle like this when I was charging my vehicle. This way, I didn't have to worry about it, coming in contact with my car. So overall, this entire package was not too bad. The screen of the unit was very unique. It's round, it's colorful, it has some information on it. It was very interesting to have the this type of screen on that type of unit. It was just kind of interesting to see a round screen. So I didn't have a problem with the screen per se. However, the statistics on the screen had some weirdness with resetting, as I showed you in a clip earlier. Normally, once you unplug or you stop a charge, that information then clears out, and the next time you plug it in, it comes back at 0 and starts back fresh again. So you know that charging session and roughly what you're doing as far as kilowatt hours, the time. In this particular instance, this screen wouldn't clear out until I actually unplugged it from the outlet. So that statistics will continue to build up and build up and build up and build up. So maybe not a big problem for most of you who are just going to look at it just to get some quick information off of it, and then that's it, you're done. But for those of you who are trying to keep stats every time you plug in and charge, well, make sure you have to unplug it first, replug it back in, reset the stats to 0, and then you'll be able to get that information reset for yourself. Now, of course, they could potentially, because this is a Wi-Fi connected smart charger, they could potentially add the functionality of a firmware update that could fix this issue. Now, that is a possibility, and I don't know if they do that, or I checked my app and there was no firmware updates for this EVSE at this time. So they could potentially fix these issues down the road if they get enough people that maybe complain about it, or maybe from watching this video, maybe they'll take this feedback and use that to improve this charger and potential future chargers as well. Now, speaking of the app, let's jump into that real quick, because that really is a little bit of a gripe in my sense. You do have a portable charger that you're going to be potentially bringing with you on the road. So you're not really going to be connecting it to people's Wi-Fi every time you go someplace. Like you go to someone's house, you go, oh, let me connect this to your Wi-Fi. Oh, you can probably just monitor your vehicle as opposed to monitoring the charger itself. Now, let's say you're using this as your home charger and you connect it to your home Wi-Fi, and then you're gonna monitor your stats and everything. The app wasn't very good. Just gonna say that. A couple things I have a problem with is that the app is not officially on the Google Play Store or the Apple Store, so you have to install what they call an APK, which is basically the application, but it's not going through a third party like Google Play or Apple Store. It's not going through that. So you don't really have a way to prove that the app is safe and doing anything potentially weird on your phone. You have to install it kind of through this back way. And if you have an Android phone, you have to approve that process to put that app on your phone. So I'm hoping that they do come up with an official app that actually is installable through the proper stores, as opposed to this method, which is the APK method, which I'm not a big fan of. The other issue I had with the app is it was very limited. It didn't have a lot of information in it. It didn't have a whole broad amount, but maybe you don't necessarily need that. But it also was not exactly working. So connected to Wi-Fi, it would say it was connected to Wi-Fi. Like this would say connected to Wi-Fi. The phone would say connected to Wi-Fi, but I wasn't getting any statistics. I would plug it into the car and the phone app wouldn't show anything. Now, when I was connected to this through Bluetooth, which would be a short range communication, it seemed to update the app perfectly fine in real time, didn't really have any issues, but for some reason over Wi-Fi, I wasn't able to get any of that real-time information. A little weird, I'm not sure why that was the case, but once again, maybe something that they can fix in an app update, or possibly it might need a firmware update to the charger itself, not sure which, but I'm sure that they can probably fix that. Whether or not they are going to, I couldn't really say for sure. So overall, if you're looking for an inexpensive EVSE, I think this one is okay. I think some of the functionality on it is not exactly done and fine-tuned yet, and I think they need to do a little bit of work. And the other thing that I would be slightly hesitant of is the lack of safety certificates on the unit itself. So as we mentioned before, we do have some stuff like the cable says it's UL, the handle shows an ETL here. There are some instances where this happens to have some safety ratings, but I'm not seeing any of those safety ratings on the box. Once again, if I turn this around, all I see on here is an FCC, which is not necessarily a safety rating. That's just for, wireless communication. And so I really wish we could see a safety rating for the unit itself, not just the cabling and the handle. I'm glad to see that at least the handle and the cable have it, but once again, it would be nice to see that on the unit itself to be certified by some sort of body that could say that this is a safe product. But for the inexpensive price, I guess they probably don't want to go through the very expensive process of getting that done. The other thing that I was a little bit upset about was the light on here. So I thought the light would be more functional. I saw a white light when I plugged it in. I thought, hey, that's pretty cool. I bet you it turns different colors based on what you're doing. A green light for charging, or maybe a blinking green light or something, or a blue light for when it's idle or not charging, just something like that. But it seemed like the light did not change at all during the process. It stayed white the entire time. And that really has no function other than it looks kind of cool. So a little bit weird there for the light as well. So if you're looking for an indicator from across the room of what the charger is doing, you're going to have to get a little closer to see the screen to see exactly what's going on with this charger. Anyway, that's pretty much my review of the BODIOO 32 amp EVSE. If you're interested in this product, of course, I'll have a link down in the description below where you can take a look at this and see if this is the proper EV charger for you. I'd like to thank BODIOO for sending me out this EVSE for review. And of course, we'll see you on the next one. Thanks again, everybody, for watching. We'll see you soon. And remember, welcome to the future. Welcome to tech motoring.